Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is February 2026, and if you are anywhere near the government contracting space, you're staring down the barrel of a very specific date.
June 30th, 2026.
Exactly. We are just 4 months out.
And usually, when we talk about regulatory deadlines on the show, it's about some obscure compliance tweak that only the lawyers really care about.
Right. Something buried in the fine print.
Yeah, but this isn't that. This is a seismic shift in the entire landscape of how the money moves.
It really is. We are talking about the fiscal year 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. And the headline number here is the kind of thing that usually makes CFOs pop champagne corks.
Oh, absolutely.
The NDAA threshold, the trigger for the Truth in Negotiations Act, is jumping from $2.5 million all the way up to $10 million.
It is a massive jump, a quadruple increase. And on paper, it looks like the government is giving everyone a huge break.
That is exactly the vibe I'm seeing everywhere right now. You look at the forums, and people are saying, finally, less red tape. I can bid on an $8 million project and not have to certify every single nut and bolt.
Yep, they think the training rules are off.
Right. It feels like the government is finally getting out of the way of small to mid-tier businesses.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling you are about to ruin the party for everyone listening.
Well, I wouldn't say ruin, but I definitely want to sober everyone up.
Yeah.
Because the mission of our deep dive today is to look at the analysis of these NDAA changes alongside some technical solutions from Daston Corporation. And when you look at those sources together, a very clear picture emerges.
The paradox of risk.
Exactly, the paradox of risk. Because while the government is reducing the sheer volume of audits, they aren't reducing the intensity. In fact, they are doing the exact opposite.
Okay, walk me through this, because typically, less regulation means less risk.
Right.
How does raising the ceiling to $10 million make things more dangerous for the listener?
Think about it from the perspective of the DCAA, the Defense Contract Audit Agency.
Right.
Their resources are finite. They only have so many auditors. For years, they've been spreading those auditors incredibly thin, chasing down compliance on $3 million or $4 million contracts.
Which is a lot of money to us, but to the Department of Defense.
It's rounding error. The ROI on those audits is extremely low.
Right. If you find a discrepancy on a $3 million contract, maybe the government recovers 50 grand. It's hardly worth the plane ticket for the auditor to fly out there.
Exactly. But now, by clearing out all that under $10 million clutter, the DCAA can concentrate all that firepower on the larger awards. The scrutiny isn't disappearing, it is condensing.
So it's like they raised the speed limit to 85.
Sure.
But they added way more speed cameras, and if you go over, they take your car.
That is a great analogy. If you cross that $10 million line after June 30th, you aren't just getting a routine audit, you are getting a forensic deep dive into your entire financial history.
And this is where the trap comes in, right? What our sources refer to as the Tina trap.
Yes. A lot of contractors, especially those who are growing quickly and just starting to hit those $10 million milestones, they've built their back office systems to handle that neighborhood watch level of scrutiny.
They are relying on spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets, manual workarounds, maybe a generic ERP system that isn't really built for government contracting.
The digital duct tape approach.
We all do it to survive in the beginning. But when you step into the $10 million arena, that duct tape just doesn't hold. You are stepping into a world where defective pricing isn't just a slap on the wrist.
It's an existential threat to the business.
Exactly.
Let's define that for a second, because defective pricing sounds like I sold the government a broken toaster. But in GovCon, this is a very specific legal term, isn't it?
It is huge. When you cross a T&I threshold, you must legally certify that your cost or pricing data is 3 things: accurate, complete, and current.
Accurate, complete, and current.
Right. And if it isn't, and the government relies on that faulty data to award you the contract, you have committed defective pricing.
And the penalty there isn't just giving the money back, is it?
Oh, no. Our source analysis points out a few very stark consequences. We are talking about contract price reductions, obviously, but also massive interest penalties. And if they think you did it on purpose, fraud investigations.
Wow.
But honestly, the thing that kills most businesses isn't the immediate financial hit, it's the damage to their past performance ratings.
A CPARS rating.
Yes, the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, your government report card. If you get a hit on CPARS for defective pricing or lack of data integrity, you become radioactive.
Because no contracting officer is going to risk their career to award a new contract to a company that just lied even accidentally to the DoD.
Exactly. So you might survive the fine, but you won't survive the silence that follows when no one will award you future work.
Okay, so the stakes are sufficiently terrifying. Let's get into the mechanics of why this trap springs. You mentioned the legal requirement is accurate, complete, and current. Now, to a layperson, those kind of sound like synonyms. What is the specific danger here?
The silent killer for most contractors is usually that last word, current.
Why is current so hard?
Because of the timeline of how government contracts actually work. Think about the handshake date. Let's say you and I are negotiating a $12 million contract. We go back and forth for months.
Standard procedure.
Right. And finally, on June 1st, we shake hands on the final price. That is the date of agreement. But I might not actually sign the formal certification of current cost or pricing data until June 15th or even later.
So there's a lag.
There is a lag, a 2-week window. And in those 2 weeks, business doesn't stop. Things change. Maybe a major subcontractor sent over a new lower price list. Maybe your internal overhead rates shifted because you just hired 3 new executives.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If you sign that certification on the 15th, but you didn't disclose that data change that happened on the 10th,
You just committed defective pricing.
you did. Even if it was an absolute accident, even if that subcontractor's email was sitting unread in your finance director's inbox. TNA doesn't care about intent in that regard. They care that the government negotiated based on outdated data.
Which brings us to the core problem with the digital duct tape we talked about. If your systems are disconnected, if your project management software doesn't talk to your finance software in real time, you physically cannot comply with the current requirement.
You can't. It is an architectural failure. You cannot solve a real-time legal requirement with a batch process spreadsheet workflow. It is mathematically impossible to guarantee your data is current across the whole company manually.
So if spreadsheets are essentially a compliance suicide mission at this level, and standard commercial accounting software doesn't know what a FIF-R clause is, where do our listeners go?
Well, this is where the second half of our source material comes in, the technical solution side, specifically looking at Daston Corporation.
Right. And usually when we talk about software on the deep dive, it's framed as just a tool, a faster calculator. But the documentation paints this as something more structural.
Yeah, Daston is described not just as a software provider, but as a partner that lives and breathes federal regulations. They are a premier NetSuite solution partner and a SuiteApp developer that specializes entirely in GovCon.
So they are acting as a bridge.
Exactly. They bridge the gap between standard commercial accounting, which is what NetSuite is famous for, and the incredibly strict requirements of the Federal Acquisition Regulation, the FAR, and the Cost Accounting Standards, CAS.
Because out of the box, NetSuite is a fantastic commercial ERP, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great for companies selling widgets globally, but it doesn't natively understand something like CAS 401.
Right. Consistency in estimating, accumulating, and reporting costs. NetSuite doesn't natively understand the difference between an allowable cost and an unallowable cost under Samburay Part 31. To standard NetSuite, an expense is just an expense.
So Daston brings in this specific tool, the DCAA On-Demand SuiteApp.
Yes. And what it does is basically force NetSuite to behave according to federal regulations. The sources emphasize how critical it is that this is a unified, cloud-based platform. It takes the power of NetSuite and makes it DCAA compliant by design.
It's putting government-grade guardrails on the commercial Ferrari.
That is exactly what it is, and our sources break down how this app solves the 2026 challenge by looking at 4 specific pillars of compliance.
Let's dive into those pillars, because I want to move from the abstract fear of an audit into the technical reality of how you survive it.
Perfect.
Pillar number 1 is automated historical cost accumulation. Now, accumulation is a very accountant word. What does this mean for the project manager trying to win a bid?
It means provenance. When you bid on that $12 million contract, you have to justify your price. You can't just guess or use industry averages. You have to say, based on our actual history doing this work, it costs X.
And certifying cost data means using actuals, not best guess estimates.
Exactly. And the DCAA wants to see the receipts for those actuals. They want to trace the transaction. They want to see the specific invoice from a vendor from 3 years ago, trace it to the general ledger, see how it was coded to the project, and see exactly how it ended up in your current proposal estimate.
If you were doing that manually with disparate systems, that's an archaeological dig. You are pulling boxes from offsite storage.
It's a nightmare. And if you can't find that artifact, the auditor just disallows the cost. Your historical basis crumbles.
So how does Daston fix the big?
The Suite app automates this entirely. It pulls real-time data directly from NetSuite's general ledger. It creates a seamless digital thread from the very first transaction all the way to the final proposal.
So when the auditor asks, where did this number come from?
You don't say, I think Bob put that in the spreadsheet. You press a button and say, here is the verifiable audit-ready thread. It completely removes the guesswork.
That is a massive time saver. Which brings us to pillar 2, and I think this is actually the most complex part of this whole equation, real-time rate validation.
Oh, yes, the Bermuda Triangle of government contracting.
We are talking about indirect rates here, fringe, overhead, G, and A. Why is calculating these so hard for a standard ERP?
Because commercial accounting is transactional. You spend $100 on office rent, great, you book the expense. But GovCon accounting is allocational. You spend $100 on rent, and the government asks, okay, how much of that rent is being used to support our specific contract? How much is general overhead? What is the base you are applying it to?
The dreaded pools and bases.
Exactly. You have to pool your indirect costs and divide them by an equitable base, like total direct labor hours, to get your rate. If you calculate that rate manually in a spreadsheet, the chance for error is incredibly high.
Especially with unallowable costs.
Right. Let's say you accidentally include an unallowable cost, like a first-class flight, or a boozy client lunch in your overhead pool.
You have artificially inflated your overhead rate, which means you are overcharging the government on every single labor hour.
And that is defective pricing. The Daston solution fixes this by automating the exclusions. It calculates these rates automatically in real time within the system.
So it guarantees the math is right.
Yes, it ensures your forward pricing rates. The rates you are projecting for the proposal are mathematically consistent with your actual historical spending. It saves you from your own manual errors.
Pillar 3 connects back to that time machine problem we discussed earlier, the lag between the handshake and the signature. The sources call this pillar seamless audit trails.
This is all about the sweep, the negotiation sweep.
That panic moment right before you sign.
Exactly. You finish negotiations, and before you sign that T&I certification, you have to sweep your entire company for any cost or pricing data that might have changed. Did anyone get a raise? Did a vendor change a price?
And the problem is, an auditor is going to come back 2 years later and ask you to prove what you knew on that exact day.
Right. They will ask for data as of the specific date of the agreement. If your accounting system is highly dynamic, meaning people are constantly overwriting old data with new data, you can't do that. You can't prove what the system looked like on June 1st versus June 15th.
It's the fog of war. You lose the context of time.
But Daston provides a clear, time-stamped audit trail. It creates a snapshot. You can prove exactly when a cost was incurred, when it was entered, and how it was allocated at that exact moment in time.
So you can provide a bulletproof defense. You can say, look at the timestamp. I did not know about that subcontractor price increase because it was not in our system as of the date of agreement.
Exactly. It turns a subjective argument with an auditor into an objective, undeniable fact.
Which is invaluable. Okay, the final pillar, pillar 4, unified project and financial data. This specifically addresses that current requirement we talked about. And the source mentioned something called labor floor checks.
Yeah.
That sounds like a manager walking around a factory floor in the 1920s with a clipboard. What is a floor check in 2026?
It's the DCAA verifying that the people you are billing the government for actually exist and that they are actually doing the work you say they are doing.
Literally checking the floor.
Literally. Auditors will show up, sometimes unannounced, sometimes virtually, and interview your employees. They will ask, what project are you working on right now? What charge code are you entering into your timesheet?
And if the employee says, I don't know, my manager just fills out my timesheet for me.
You are in massive trouble.
But how does unifying project and financial data solve that?
Because the biggest risk isn't just a confused employee, it's the disconnect between the operations department and the finance department. The silos.
Right. If ops shifts a team of engineers to a new project on Tuesday, but they don't notify finance until the end of the month, you have a massive disconnect. You are billing the government for people who aren't on the project, or you're billing them at the wrong labor categories.
And that data is no longer current. Exactly. By unifying this in NetSuite with Daston, there is no air gap. The integration automatically incorporates the absolute latest labor floor checks and subcontractor costs. If a time entry is made in the project module, finance sees it instantly. If a sub raises their rate, the project manager knows immediately.
It bridges the gap. So if we look at these 4 pillars combined, it seems like Daston is systematically closing the gaps where auditors like to pry. the gap between history and the proposal, the gap between allowable and unallowable, the gap between then and now, and the gap between ops and finance.
That is a perfect summary. The DCAA thrives in the gaps. Your job as a contractor is to close them.
So let's zoom out here as we wrap up.
Yeah.
When the June 30th, 2026 deadline looming, we have the $10 million threshold, and we have this paradox of risk, where fewer audits actually means much more intense scrutiny. If you are a contractor listening to this and you are eyeing those new $12 million or $15 million opportunities, what is the ultimate takeaway?
The takeaway from all our sources is that the FY 2026 NDAA signals a very clear mandate. The government wants faster procurement, they want to cut the red tape to get things moving, but in exchange for that speed, they're demanding absolute data integrity for their large investments.
Right.
You have a choice. You can view this $10 million threshold and the compliance that comes with it as a massive hurdle, something to fear. Or you can use tools like Daston SuiteApp to turn compliance into a competitive advantage.
The competitive advantage, because speed wins.
Exactly. If you can turn around a fully compliant, audit-ready proposal in 3 days because your data is automated and unified, while your competitor is taking 3 weeks to manually duct tape their spreadsheets together.
You win the bid.
You win, and you win with confidence. As contractors scale toward these massive $10 million plus opportunities, they have to realize that they need a system that automates the proof, not one that just stores the data.
That is such a crucial distinction. Automating the proof, unlocking that confidence so you don't have to pad your margins just to cover the risk of unknown accounting errors.
Precisely. You can be leaner, faster, and much more aggressive in your growth.
I want to leave everyone listening with a very specific, provocative thought to test themselves with today. A reality check based on our source material.
Let's hear it.
We talked about the time machine and the sweep. So here is the challenge for you. If a DCAA auditor walked into your office right now, literally as you were listening to this deep dive, and asked you for a time-stamped, definitive audit trail of your absolute latest subcontractor costs from yesterday, just yesterday, could your current system hold up?
And you have to answer that without saying, let me open Excel.
Right, without opening Excel and without calling 3 different department heads to manually verify the numbers.
If you are searching through spreadsheets to answer that question, you are not ready for June 30th.
That is the $10 million reality check. Well, thank you so much for breaking this down. This is incredibly complex stuff, but absolutely critical for anyone looking to survive and scale in this new landscape.
Always a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, good luck with the prep. Do not underestimate that deadline. We will catch you on the next deep dive.